it's obvious, like this is going to make life better for everyone.
Yeah.
So why won't they get on board?
Yeah, super frustrating.
It is so frustrating. Often we think it's because they're lazy or stupid or slack or, just plain dumb. I don't know. Maybe there's a few who are, but I don't think it's the majority.
Not pointing fingers anywhere, right?
No. And maybe,
definitely not across this table.
No, just because you pay them doesn't mean they'll do what you want them to.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all thought that before though, right?
Change might require the employee to learn something new, and they often feel threatened by that.
Definitely.
And a classic example is new technology. For the older people in your workforce, maybe they're 35, 40 or older.
I'm giggling because it's not always old. This is me, everybody. By the way, this is me.
You are a technical lemon. How frustrating is it when you have a great idea that will improve your business and you try to make the changes, but your team just aren't excited and they actually make it hard for you to make the changes happen? Tune into this week's podcast where we discuss how to get your team on side and excited about making positive changes in your business. Well, howdy there. Tony Fraser-Jones here, the host of the Profitable Tradie podcast, hanging out here with my good buddy and sidekick, Phil Smith.
Yo.
How's it going today, brother?
Always good.
Always good.
Bloody-tastic.
Fantastic. What are we talking about today?
Mate, well, as the listeners probably know, we run a coaching business for the owners of plumbing, electrical, and similar service and construction businesses. And our members are the type that are, super motivated to make changes and improve their business, but often they get really frustrated because their team don't seem to have that same enthusiasm as they do when it comes to making those changes. And sometimes when you're out there making changes, they don't just not get excited, but they can actually actively sabotage progress.
Oh yeah, it's very frustrating, and particularly when the changes that we want to make actually seem so obvious, like the benefits to everyone are really clear, and it's like, well, it's obvious, like this is going to make life better for everyone.
Yeah.
So why won't they get on board?
Yeah, super frustrating.
It is so frustrating. And often we think it's because they're lazy or stupid or slack or, just plain dumb.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe there's a few who are, but I don't think it's the majority.
Not pointing fingers anywhere, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. And maybe,
definitely not across this table.
No,
right?
no.
Yeah.
Anyhow, look, the change might be anything. It could be you've got a new piece of software, a new piece of equipment or kit. Maybe it's some systems or processes, some quality assurance processes or pricing templates, or technology,
inquiry script,
anything,
things to say, customer service process, could be anything.
A sales framework or script that you want the guys to use when they're out in the field. Could be anything.
Something you've heard on this podcast, even.
Maybe, hopefully.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly frustrating because you know that it'll actually help the business do better.
Yeah, 100%. But they just won't get involved with it, and basically puts all your hard work and excitement to nothing. So I'm sure you got a story.
I do have a story.
Yeah, hit us up.
So I'm a bit of a conference junkie. I love going to conferences and learning new stuff. I've been to Tony Robbins conferences, other coaching conferences, property investing conferences, you name it. I go to it because I really enjoy that. And when I go to those, I get really motivated, really fired up, really excited about what I've learnt. And I come back with lots of ideas and stuff that seem obvious to me to put into place and improve, whether it's in our investing or in the business or wherever it is. And my dear wife, Bronwyn, she's an amazing lady. She bears the brunt of it. And I think sometimes when I come back, I get the sense that she's maybe a little bit less enthusiastic about some of the stuff I'm coming back with than I am.
There's some conferences you go to, I'm bearing the brunt of it. So if Bronwyn's getting it worse than me, I feel sorry for her.
That's right. It's probably really overwhelming.
Phil, you should hear this thing that this property investor said. I'm like, yeah, bro, sweet.
Yeah, I probably need to dial it back a bit sometimes.
We are busy,
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes in those situations, I feel a little bit like, oh, man, now there's cold water being poured on my ideas, and, you feel a bit like, oh.
Yeah, deflated.
But deflated.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Bronwyn's amazing. I think, we've all experienced something like this.
Yeah.
Now, recently, Bronwyn went to an investing seminar. I stayed at home and looked after the kids. There's 4 of them. It was chaos. I'm still recovering, but I was super excited that she could go. That was awesome. She came back and she was really excited about everything she'd learned. And she talked about the stuff that she'd learned and what we could do. And my initial feeling, now honestly, was I was a little bit lukewarm. I was like, oh, okay, righto. But I guess I'm lucky because I've been in the other position. I knew that it's really important to be supportive, and I just asked a bunch of questions so I could really understand what had gone on. And after a while, actually, I was pretty excited about some of the stuff that she'd learned as well. I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And I'm keen to get on and make some stuff happen. the thing is, we're always more excited than our team or the people we share the information or the ideas we have with, because, we've learnt about it. We've had it delivered to us in a way that's, really compelling, maybe by a speaker or a book or something. And we can't sell the idea like they can. And it's just a different thing. And so I think we've all experienced that, like, oh, well, why won't they get on board?
Yeah, but you just basically haven't sold it right. That's really
right.
the key.
Yeah, it hasn't been sold.
And I mean, of course you haven't, because reality is you got your idea from like a great book or an awesome podcast like the Profitable Tradie podcast. Or maybe you got one, from
like, share and follow.
That's
it.
Like, share, follow. Yep, yeah, that's one. Or otherwise, maybe, you saw something on YouTube, or you've been to a conference yourself, something the likes. You've had a great learning delivered by a compelling speaker or a great book or the likes, and you're going to come back and try to deliver that to somebody else and get them on board. But the reality is you probably had an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, an entire day, or a week worth of reading a book potentially to get on board with this idea. And you probably gave a 10-minute chat and you're wondering why they're not on board. So
yeah, sometimes you even think, oh, that doesn't sound so cool when I say it back. Yeah, it seemed better
I can't
the
remember
first
what
time.
was good about that. It's like, you probably need to go back and review the learning. But look, I think the point is it's not an uncommon experience. I'm sure a lot of people listening have had similar. So yeah, and I think bunch of problems we can run into if we, don't learn how to get people on board with our ideas.
Yeah. Well, the first one is you do get a lot of pushback to change. So say we're going to do some stuff to your team, and they're like, it just feels like a hassle to them. They're like, oh, dragging their feet. Or maybe they, you ram through the change and you actually just end up chasing people up. Like they sort of say they will, but really you've got compliance from them. Like they're like, yeah, but really there's not a lot of commitment. They aren't buying in. They're not on board really. They're just doing it because they have to.
Well, I think the thing is often we get reluctant compliance, which feels like compliance, but there's a difference between reluctant compliance and excited compliance, for example. They're very different outcomes.
Yeah, well, compliance is not commitment, and we want commitment. It's very difficult for meaningful change to happen in the business without getting people on board, because it's you trying to, if you've got a team, if it's just you, well, okay, you've just got to convince yourself. That's a different story. But we're talking about where you've got a team, maybe you've got 3 people or 10 people or 25 or 150. Obviously, the more you have, the more important this is, because you've got to drive the change through the whole organization.
Yeah.
And your business actually starts to stall and you get really, really frustrated.
That's it.
Like so many business owners that we talk with are frustrated because they can't seem to move things because their team, to use a phrase, a bunch of useless bastards, right? They're like really frustrated.
Yeah, well, it can feel that way at least. And on the other hand, if we can get buy-in to the ideas that we got and the changes we want to make, some pretty significant upsides.
Yeah, people will accept and embrace change, like they're excited about it. You can actually focus on your role as your teams across what they need to do.
Yeah.
You don't have to follow up. You don't have to beg and cajole. You don't have to get the stick out, whack people with the stick. Metaphorically, it would be awkward if you did that actually, and your business will improve, and there's more cash and profit and better lifestyle for you because you've been able to make these positive changes to your business, which do require you to get your team on board.
Not to mention, there's one we actually didn't mention there, which is you'll just be filled with more energy, because what a bloody waste of energy when you feel like you're beating your head against the wall to get people on board with an idea that's actually going to make everybody's lives better. Whereas on the other hand, when people are, you're not getting just compliance or reluctant compliance, you're getting that commitment and people are right on board. It doesn't just not drain your energy, it actually boosts your energy and you feel awesome because you're excited. We're all on the same team, we're all, rowing in the same direction, and this is going to be so great, and I'm not in it alone, which is, super powerful. So it's a big benefit. So how do we do this?
The first thing is to get people on board with change in your organization. You have to understand that your responsibility as a leader is to get them on board. No point asking why can't they just get on board?
Yeah.
Because just because you pay them doesn't mean they'll do what you want them to.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all thought that before, though, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I pay them, so they should do it.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't
Why can't
work
they
that
just
way.
get on board?
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Why can't they see this as a great idea?
It's our responsibility. That's the first thing. If we're blaming them and making it that they're the problem, then we give our power away. It's like, well, what can I do about that? I can beg and cajole, but that never works.
No.
And it feels weird. Yeah. Especially when you're the boss. So it's an inside-out job. It's our job to figure out how we can get them on board. What we need to do differently as a leader is critical. So the first step in this process is taking responsibility for the results and the outcome you're getting.
Yeah, 100%.
which is basically living above the line. Rather than blaming people, you've got to actually take responsibility and ownership for the result.
Yeah.
Because if they aren't on board, well, we're the ones who need to change, not them.
Yeah, totally. And you got to think about this from the team's perspective. Like, if they don't understand the problem as much as you, which they won't, because typically they're only seeing part of the issue, or they actually don't understand all the implications of the team. If that's the case, then how can they get on board the way you're on board? They just don't even understand it to the level that you do. I mean, take doing your job cards accurately, which I'm sure
The old chestnut.
The old chestnut. I'm sure everybody's struggled with that at some point. But again, like your guys out in the field or on the tools, they don't understand the effects that this has on, say, the office team. Like they don't. And even when you explain it to them, it's, they might even logically get it, but it's a bit different than really understanding what it's like to sit in that other chair and experience this from a different perspective. Plus, they don't understand what it's like to sit in your chair and experience that, slow invoicing speed because the job cards aren't filled out accurately and we got to go back and forth and get an accurate description so that we can get an invoice together and send it out, that's actually going to stuff your cash flow and create this, overwhelming stress for you because you're worried how you're going to pay the bills. They don't see that. And even if you can explain it to them, they've never felt it and they will never feel it. This is the way that you feel it. So
They can't connect the dots.
They can't, and again, like customer payments and, like the issues that's going to have off the back of, say, slow invoicing or, the complaints that you might get from clients because...
If there's an incorrect invoice.
Yeah, incorrect invoice, or maybe something's been missed but you don't have any notes about what's been missed or what actually happened on the job, and so you're going back and forth dealing with an unhappy client. And you got someone in your office who's just having this hell of a time cleaning up after somebody that just didn't do the job cards right. But the person who didn't do the job cards right will never really understand that if you can't shed some light on it for them.
Their thing is like, why are you always on my back about this? I did it at the end of the week, or I did it at the end of the day when I'd forgotten half of the stuff that I used and, didn't get the time right or whatever, didn't write an accurate description.
Yeah.
They're like, why are you always on my back? Why are you such a pain?
Well, that's it. Is everybody's looking through their own lens.
Yep.
And if you think about the team's perspective that they have here, is they're seeing all the difficulty that they have to have getting those job cards done on time, the extra hoops that you're making them jump through and the fact that I can't get to my next job on time because I'm sitting here filling out job cards in the van. It doesn't matter what it is. They're seeing that. They're not seeing the pain and struggling that the office staff are going through with that slow invoicing and the complaints and inaccurate pricing, all of the flow-on effects. That's not what they see.
Yeah. And there are a bunch of reasons why people will stall with change and not get on board with the changes you want to make. And they may not make sense to you, but they make total sense to your employees. And one is fear of change.
Yeah.
Change brings uncertainty, and people don't like uncertainty. How will it actually affect their day-to-day work? Might it affect their job security? The less information people have, the more fearful they are because they have to basically paint the picture themselves without actually having the real information.
Yeah.
So fear of change is a big one. And just naturally as people, we actually are more comfortable with the status quo.
100%.
Most of us find familiarity and comfort in the same.
Yeah.
And any change actually requires effort. So we're creatures of habit, and then we've got to change the habit. That actually requires quite a lot of thought, which is tough for people. Another one which you often isn't thought of is actually a lack of competence.
This one's huge.
This is massive. Change might require the employee to learn something new, and they often feel threatened by that.
Definitely.
And a classic example is new technology. For the older people in your workforce, maybe they're 35, 40 or older. Let's say it's that old. Anyway.
I'm giggling because it's not always old. This is me, everybody, by the way. This is me.
You are a technical lemon.
We roll out a new technology when we rolled out our latest CRM upgrade. Oh, man, I was packing my undies. This is terrifying for me because I'm going to be found out. Yeah.
And this happens to a lot of people in your business is they actually are scared that they won't have what it takes to learn what they need to learn, particularly around a new piece of software.
Yeah.
If they haven't grown up with it, it's like, wow, this is a big issue.
Yeah.
So they're scared that they may not have the competence. They feel ashamed of themselves, and they pull a defense mechanism, which is basically just kind of avoiding the issue.
Yeah.
So
totally.
that's a big one, and you might not think about that. It's easy to you, but it's not easy to everyone.
That's it.
Poor comms, like poor communication, is another one.
Yeah.
About what's involved, what's required from them, and what the benefits actually are for everyone as well. Like if you don't explain the benefits, well, is it any wonder people struggle to actually get on board?
Well, then it just feels like hoops to jump through.
That's right. It's more hassle.
Yeah.
And the last one, which I think is powerful, is a lack of trust. If people don't want to get on board with changes that you're suggesting, it may actually show you that your culture is more low trust than you think. Because if they're not super excited about the changes, it means maybe they don't quite trust that you've got their back, that you've got their best interests at heart. The flip side is doing the change process well actually is a great way to build trust as well. If you're really open and transparent and help them understand why you're doing what you're doing, that's going to do a lot to actually build the culture of trust, which will make it easier next time to make the changes.
Yeah, 100%.
So the thing, those are some of the reasons. So what we want to do here is we want to actually prepare the ground before we do change. So rather than just turn up and ram the change through and say, this is what we're doing, team, crack on, let's get into it. The work we do before we actually pull trigger is critical. And the key concept here is you want to get your team involved because involvement breeds commitment. The more involved they are, the more they're going to buy into the change.
Yeah, 100%. And we do have a process to follow here. We call it the unfreeze, change, and then refreeze process. And this actually comes from, a lot of change management research, which, again, if anyone's from a corporate environment, you've probably heard a lot about change management. But, if you haven't, this is a very simple process and metaphor to go through. And basically, I think the easiest way to think about this is if you imagine a piece of ice. So imagine that this ice cube is in the shape of a square, and you'd like to turn it into a triangle. So you want to change that piece of ice. So one way that you could do that is you could chip away at that square until it's in the shape of a triangle. And that's cool. You'll get there in the end. You'll have a jagged little triangle. It won't be very perfect. And moreover, one of the big things here is you have to lose a lot of the ice. So you got to really chip it away, and it's a lot of collateral damage. And what this is similar to would be, basically ramming through a change without much thought or care. You're just going to bash it into place, bash that compliance away. And what happens is you lose a lot of the metaphorical ice, which is basically that collateral damage and that trust that you have with your team when you're having to pull the old do it because I'm your boss, which I'm sure a bunch of us have said that before, and the minute it comes out of your mouth, you tend to regret it, right? That wasn't a good thing for the relationship between you and the staff.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't regret it, and you're like, you really believe they should do it because you're the boss. But if you find yourself doing that, you need to look in the mirror, because I'm telling you, that's not going to work well.
It's the weakest form of compliance. So on the other hand, if I wanted to change that square into a triangle without all the collateral damage, another thing I could do is I could just melt the ice cube right down into water, and then put it in a cast of a triangle and refreeze it. And then that way I keep every last drop of that water, every last bit of that ice, and I get a fully formed new result without the damage of metaphorical trust. So again, in order to do that metaphorically, what I'm actually doing is I'm going to work through all of the problems that we have with the team and be able to break down the solution that we're trying to look at, and get everything out on the table, which is essentially melting the current pushback. And then what I'm able to do is then rebuild some opportunity there into a new shape, where again we have a nice open discussion as a team about what we stand to gain from this change, and that way I can get everything out on the table and then change the spin on all of it so that we can look at it in a more positive light. So that's basically what you're doing.
Yeah, and the thing here is, if you want to make change, rather than pushing harder, it's much more effective to reduce the resistance. Yeah, that's the key. 100%. So reduce resistance, change will happen more easily. If you push harder and harder, it creates more and more tension and effort and more collateral damage.
Yeah, totally. So how we do it is you'd have a meeting. So essentially it's a change management meeting. You wouldn't call it that to the staff, but that's basically what it is, where you've identified a problem. Now, the thing with this is you do identify the change you want to make beforehand. This is not a meeting where you get the whole team together to discuss what do you think we should do, because frankly, you'll probably get a bunch of silly ideas. You might get some good ones, but they won't all be great. And the minute you give that forum, now you have to start entertaining ideas you don't want to. You probably have a solution you already want to do. So if you've made your mind up, that's cool. This is to go and sell that idea to the team. So you run this meeting and you go through two parts. So number one, we have to unfreeze. The other one, we have to refreeze. And we call this the problem tree and the opportunity tree. So the problem tree, essentially what I do is that I state, this is the problem we're trying to solve. Here's a proposed solution. And now I want to do what's called a problem tree, which is where I want you guys, the team, to tell me everything that's going to be terrible about my solution. And really let me have it, like go for it. And basically you might have to start the ball rolling here, because people are going to be a little bit nervous about telling you your idea is no good. But the fact is, they will have pushback and things in their head. And I think a bit like a bucket. I can't pour new stuff into the bucket if it's already full. So I need them to empty their buckets, essentially, in terms of their pushback, so I can refill it with good stuff. And so you really drag it out of them, so let's say, again, we look at the job cards example. Things I'm looking for with that is, this is making me jump through hoops. We never used to have to do this before. Everything was working fine the way it was. Why do I have to do this extra work? This is going to take extra time and I'm not going to get to my next job. How are we going to build for this? These are the stuff that you want them to start saying. And if they don't start, you start. Start writing stuff up on the board for them until they really get going, and then ask them what else, keep it going, and congratulate them when they say stuff so that they learn it's okay to do that. You write all of those problems that they have up on the board, and then what you do is next to it, you write who does that affect. So again, if it's going to take extra time, who does that affect? Well, it affects the tradesman on site, it affects the client, blah, blah, blah. Write it all up. Once you are definitely confident you've exhausted that list, then what you do is what's called the opportunity tree, which is where we're refreezing. And that's where you say, all right, cool, thanks guys. That's really, really helpful that we've discussed all of that. Now what I'd like to do is look at the opportunities that we stand to gain from if we do implement this strategy. And same thing, you're getting them to call out opportunities. What would work about this? For example, if we can get the invoicing speed to be faster, we're going to have happier clients, and we're going to get paid faster, cash flow will be better, and we can use it in these ways. Again, you might have to prompt this a bit at the start because they won't have thought about this at all. They'd have thought a lot about the problems. That'll all be there. You might have to help them with the opportunities. But again, big, long opportunity tree, and who will it affect? So again, if the job cards are more accurate, then it's going to save a bunch of time for your office admin staff because they won't have to go back and forth with tradesmen trying to figure out what to put in there.
Well, one of the opportunities might be you're not going to get rung 17 times a week from the office about what was on the job card.
Yeah, exactly. So try to look at it and what's in it for both sides of it, office staff, field staff, because that's often going to be a bit of a point of contention depending on the strategy. But the point is what you end up with is your problem tree. This is everything that's wrong. Essentially, you get them to empty that bucket or you've melted your ice cube. Then you do your opportunity tree, which is essentially filling that bucket with the new thoughts or refreezing that ice cube into a different shape. And that altogether is going to help you to get the buy-in to the change that you're looking for. Right. So simple process.
And then you make the change, you put it in, and there's some other really powerful things you can do to refreeze the change or really bed it in. Once you've got the opportunity tree, is like, you put the new process or the change into your system. So it's in your standard operating procedures. You put it in your KPIs, so that's what people are measured against. It's in your rules of the game, so people know that that's the way you roll. And you give people feedback. So when they do it well, you're like, hey man, that's awesome. Really appreciate the fact that you've done what we said. You're doing all your job cards in the ute before you're leaving site, and it's all tickety boo. That's amazing. And also having difficult conversations when they don't come up to scratch. So making sure you call people out when they're just letting the side down. And then if you need to, if people won't change, then it's a whole another kettle of fish. It becomes a performance management issue, and either they shape up or they don't. They can't hang around.
Yeah, that's it. So, overall, I suppose it's all about if we can get that buy-in to change, then we're in a better spot. So let's land this plane.
Let's do it. Having a team committed to making improvements to your business is essential for your business growth and success. And your ability to lead your team through change to get their buy-in will make all the difference. Thanks heaps for listening. We'll catch you all again next time.
See you later.